And hello to everyone and welcome to this webinar. And we'll be looking at ADAPT, which is our new adaptive learning platform from Collins. And we'll be looking in this session specifically at the primary maths content on ADAPT and how you can use it to help your pupils excel. My name, as Bethan said, is Jenny, and I'll be running the session alongside Alex. And in our time together today, we're going to give you some background on adaptive learning, why it's important and how it can add value to classrooms everywhere. Then we'll take a look at the ADAPT platform together to see it in action. And then we can recap and hopefully you'll have some questions for us that you've popped in the Q&A, which we can run through and answer. Okay. So first of all, a short film to get us started. And hopefully fantastic. So that is ADAPT in a nutshell, an adaptive learning platform that responds to your learners at a truly personal level. But if you're new to adaptive learning, then let's take this chance to sort of dig in a little bit and start from the fundamentals. Oh, let's go past that. So what is adaptive learning? This chart shows the basic differences between traditional learning on the left and adaptive learning on the right. So in traditional learning, then you have that direct contact between the instructors and the students where everything is mediated through the instructor and students receive the same materials and respond to the same materials, but there is less opportunity to personalize the learning journeys. Adaptive learning does something a little bit different by adding adaptive educational software as that linking point between the teacher and the student, so that the adaptive learning, the adaptive software is actually providing the students with the content that is best fitted to their individualized learning journey, to their knowledge gaps. It will assess what they already know, it will respond to that, and it will adapt their journey as they go. So you might be familiar with adaptive software, you may already be using it to teach your students. But where learning resources are adaptive, what we mean by that is that they change in response to the learner's input. They're constantly evolving and changing, and ultimately that means that everyone is getting more of what they need. Students are getting more time and focus, and so are the instructors and the teachers. And that means more relevance of the teaching and the learning, and more successful learning. So let's look at the benefits expressed in some other ways. So 5 benefits of adaptive learning in the classroom: the opportunity for automated intervention, more one-to-one teaching time, a continuous learning journey, increased student engagement and improved outcomes. And if we can express that in another way, then this is bringing you more time, you're saving time in planning, marking, and therefore you're creating more time for that teaching opportunities, and particularly for those one-to-one interventions. You're also freeing up time for focus, so every student sees what they most need, which makes it their journey and their learning most relevant to where they are at the moment and where they need to get to. And students are more engaged with their learning because it is more meaningful to them, and that all adds together to greater learning success. In a short answer, adaptive learning is valued and it's valuable because it brings improved outcomes for learners. And it's something that is seen as a key factor in closing attainment gaps and in helping all students to reach their learning potential. But not all adaptive learning is the same, not all is equal. So let's have a look specifically now at ADAPT, the platform from Collins, and see how ADAPT is truly adaptive. It creates a unique learning journey for every student. So as we've run through the platform, then you will get a chance to see how that works in action, that it creates a unique learning pathway by listening to the metacognition of the students as they work through. And it's different for every student because we are all different. We learn in different ways. We take more or less time to grasp a particular concept, and ADAPT is set up to tailor a learning journey and a path to all of those factors. It goes as slowly as we need, and conversely, if you've already grasped something, then you don't need to spend more time on it. So it targets your study time really effectively. It's not concentrating on what you already know, it's moving you forward to what you're going to learn next. ADAPT can be used in lots of different learning contexts, as we can see on this side, on the right side of the screen. So it can be used in class for practice and consolidation, it can be used for intervention, for homework, for revision, for assessment. And we can say this with confidence because we've had pilot schools who are using ADAPT for all of these situations, and all of these contexts. One of the key benefits to ADAPT is the really granular data that you will get out, the individual profiles on each learner, which give you that information about where the gaps are in individual students' knowledge, and also at a more group level. So you will really be able to plan your teaching and your interventions based on that knowledge. Teachers set the sessions of work to the students through the platform, and they can be used alongside other resources and textbooks, so it fits very neatly into what you may be using already. And finally, it rewards grit and resilience. ADAPT then, one of the key focuses of it is actually keeping you going, making sure that you take the time you need to really master a concept, and giving you lots of reassurance and actually sort of tangible, visible rewards for that effort that you have put into the platform. So it's helping to develop that all-important growth mindset, which we know is so important for student confidence and student success. And moving on, then I'd like to highlight one key term here that you can see on the first bullet point, which is metacognition. So metacognition is a really key part of ADAPT. But what exactly do we mean by metacognition? What we mean by metacognition in the context of ADAPT is what students know about what they know. So it's about thinking about your learning, and it can take place before, during, or after that learning. We'll see this in action in a moment. But this is the key element in ADAPT that creates each student's unique learning pathway. Metacognition develops our reflection skills and our confidence in our own knowledge, as well as promoting the softer skills, growth mindset, resilience, and grit. So all the good stuff that we know is part of high quality learning. Metacognition is the key USP of ADAPT. Each student's experience in ADAPT is unique because they've all got different knowledge and confidence levels in different areas. But ultimately, through ADAPT, they reach mastery of their learning. And crucially, in ADAPT, this is underpinned by their confidence in that knowledge. So this will all make a lot more sense and be clearer when we look at the platform itself in a few moments. Okay, hopefully that the sort of basic concept of metacognition is familiar to you. Let's look at a bit more closely about how ADAPT uses this metacognition to ensure that every student gets their own adaptive learning. So I've showcased on this slide a fairly straightforward question. Hopefully everyone will be able to have a go at it. It's a fill in the missing numbers question. In this decimal number 12.54, the digit is in the tenths place. So I'll just let you have a little think about which number you would choose in that example, whether you choose 1, 2, 5 or 4, and then have a think about how confident you feel about this answer. And you'll see at the bottom of the screen, then you've got 4 color-coded faces to indicate confidence. So what we'll see next will depend on how we've answered, whether we've answered the question correctly. So not only up here, but also how confidently we rated our confidence in that answer. And these confidence ratings are unique and they are the core of ADAPT. They allow us to do all of these things which are listed out on the slide. So they map and direct a learning pathway for each user. They create the learner profile. They develop the reflection skills and the confidence of the learners in what they're learning. They build that all-important growth mindset. And they steer us away from just repeating what we already know to actually moving on to the areas where we need to grow new knowledge and build our learning. And that brings a positive impact on our learning into each session. And it's really important that this is sort of avoiding gamification. It's rewarding effort and thought over speed, and it's preventing gaming and guesswork. So I'd just like to recap on that ADAPT is the only platform that truly delivers adaptive learning in this way, by having that foregrounded focus on your confidence ratings. And I think this is a really powerful quote from one of our primary school teachers who's been using ADAPT platform really from the start and has been using it during the last 2 years. I'm just going to read it out because I think it comes across, it really captures a lot of what I've been saying. We try to develop a growth mindset, and the Collins platform supports that in 2 ways. Firstly, children must keep on going until they get the questions right. Secondly, because they must rate their own confidence for each answer given, it reinforces the message about not being afraid to admit they don't know something. So I think that is really, that's really powerful, that they recognise actually that the benefit that the confidence ratings are giving them, and actually giving children that sort of permission to say they don't know something and to therefore move ahead. Okay, so now it's time for us to take a dive into ADAPT for ourselves. I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Alex, who can give you a little run through what the platform looks like as a teacher and as a student.
Thanks, Jenny. I'm just going to I'm going to seize control of the screen sharing for a second. And there we go. How's that? Are we now seeing my screen? Perfect. I got the thumbs up of approval. So hello everybody. As Jenny said, my name is Alex. I'm a digital product manager at Collins, and what we're going to do in this next part of the webinar is just have a look round ADAPT. So I'm going to start off by logging in as a pupil. So what you can see on my screen at the moment is what a pupil would see when they log in, and then once we've had a look at that, I'll then take the opportunity to log in as a teacher and to show you how you as a teacher might interact with ADAPT on a kind of daily or weekly basis. So as I say, starting from a pupil's perspective, this screen is the pupil dashboard. I'll just give you a bit of a tour around the dashboard. So over on the left-hand side, I guess starting with the least important in a way, this is the scratch pad. Doesn't serve any purpose in terms of the pupils learning, but it allows them to just to kind of doodle away over on the left-hand side. You can also see, which we might come to again a little bit later, an avatar, and part of the learning process, one of the things that, as I say, we might get to when I open up one of the activities in a moment, is that the pupils are rewarded for perseverance by the appearance of the kind of avatar creator. So they get the opportunity to select new avatars, to select accessories for their avatars. So it's not something that's kind of taking over from the learning, but it's something that, as I say, is rewarding them for spending the time and keeping going. Most crucially, in the center of the screen, I have my tasks. So the way Adapt is set up is that this is entirely curated by the pupil's teacher or teachers. So these are the activities that have been set for this particular pupil by their teacher for them to complete, and those might be time limited or they might not be, depending on how you're using Adapt in your school. I've also got in the top right hand corner my previous learning, where I can see the activities that have been set for me previously that I've already completed. And just scrolling down to the bottom, I've also got some progress metrics. So these mountain icons will pop up again when I open up one of the activities. This is just a way of giving the pupils a sense of their own progress as they make their way through activities in Adapt. So topics literally being how many of the activities they've completed, and then these knowledge and grit scores, which will increase as they make their way through. So without further ado, I think today we're going to have a look at time. So I'm going to just select the time card from the dashboard. So one thing to say is that ordinarily, when selecting a brand new card from the dashboard, the first thing that would pop up would be something called a module summary screen. So that would just be 2 or 3 bullet points explaining to the pupil what it is they're about to encounter in this activity. The only reason we're not seeing that in this demo is because, as you can see on the right-hand side, this pupil is already 30% of the way through this particular activity. So once they've gone past that module summary screen, the next thing they'll see is a question, a diagnostic question, something like this, which is assessing their understanding of a very specific area of maths. This mirrors the screen that you saw in Jenny's presentation. So as we saw then, there's a requirement both to enter an answer to the question, but then also to indicate the pupil's confidence icon, which is what's represented by these kind of emoji faces at the bottom. I know it, I think so, I'm not sure, or no idea. The other things to just draw your attention to, we have over on the left-hand side the tutor. So the tutor, this is set not to play the audio at the moment, but by default that would be on. So all of the questions would be read aloud. The idea there being that it shouldn't be kind of difficulty with reading shouldn't be a barrier to pupils using the platform. They can hear all of the questions just as they can also read them. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to answer this question incorrectly. So we're at 9:15 a.m. It's asking me to enter the time in the 12-hour format. So let's enter what we know to be an incorrect answer, and then I'm going to say I'm not sure. So by doing that, what then happens is that I can see what I wrote. I wrote 21:15. I can then see the correct answer, what I should have written. And then in this case, actually, it was half wrong, half right. So I can see that the second part of my answer was right. What I've then got, you'll see at the bottom, is the option to learn more here. So if I click on the option there. It'll bring up some learning content related to this particular topic. The pupil's able to flick through this learning content, and the idea is that that should put them in a better position to answer the question correctly next time they encounter a question on this same topic. Bear with me 1 second. Okay. Then if I click next, I'll get another type of question. I wanted to flick through a few questions to illustrate that one thing about Adapt that I'd say compares favorably to some of the other products you might have seen out there in the market is that you will see a really wide range of question types. So you have multiple choice questions, you have fill in the gap questions like this. You also have labeling questions where you have to label a diagram. You have drag and drop type questions. So I guess there are two big benefits to that. One is pupil engagement. So you don't have pupils switching off really quickly because they're just being presented with a long list of very similar multiple choice type questions. But also it really allows the platform to dig into the pupils' knowledge and confidence levels to power the adaptive engine. The one thing I missed out when I first shared the screen was this knowledge up at the top. So this is a metric that will increase as they make their way through the activity. So I think let's get this one right. 12 months in a year, I think so. And then the last thing I guess to show you is as you make your way through. So here, what I have instead of a question is again, some learning content. So the platform has determined that it's the right time to take me through this content related to days in months to prepare me for the questions that are coming next, or because I've already answered a couple of questions in this area incorrectly, or maybe lacking in confidence. So if I make my way through this content, then when I get to the end, I'll again be presented with those 4 confidence icons. But what you might notice is that the labeling is ever so slightly different. So here it's asking the pupil to say either I already knew that, or I now understand it, having read this content that's been presented to me. I think so, or I still don't get it. And if they're staying, when presented with this kind of learning content, if they're still saying I don't get it, then that will feed back to the Collins team, and we keep track of those kinds of things. So if we have lots of pupils indicating that they're not happy with a particular resource, that will prompt our team to go in and look at it and decide whether it can be made clearer, whether there might be a mistake. Hopefully that wouldn't be the case, but more likely whether it could be made a bit clearer. So we didn't see the avatars, but I'm conscious that I'd like to show you what the platform looks like from a pupil's perspective. So you have to take it from me that as I make my way through, I'm rewarded for purely for answering a certain number of questions, regardless whether I get them right or wrong, by being able to enter that avatar selector as I described before, and being able to select new icons, select new accessories, etc. So if I come back to the dashboard, the pupil dashboard, the other thing just quickly before I do move to the teacher-facing side is that the pupils can access some very basic reporting based on their own progress. So they can see which activities have been set for them, which ones they've completed, and how long it took them. So they're also, just as you as teachers are able to keep on top of the work that your pupils are doing, the pupils themselves can keep on top of their own work. Right, so I think it's time to look at it from a teacher's perspective. So bear with me 1 second while I log in. Okay, so when a teacher logs in, much as the students have a dashboard view, the teachers have their own version of that dashboard. So again, I'll give you a bit of a tour around the teacher dashboard. Over on the left-hand side, these are the things that we anticipate that teachers are likely to want to do most often. So chiefly to set some work. So the big orange button is set some work. Below that is is how you access the reports. So that's checking up on what your pupils have done so far with the work that you have set for them. You then have the library, which shows you all of the maths content that you have access to as part of your subscription with Adapt. And then the support page just lets you know how to get in contact with our team. In the center of the screen, I have my tasks. So you'll remember that with the pupil dashboard, these were the tasks they needed to complete that were kind of outstanding, that had been set for them by their teacher. In the case of the teacher tasks section on the dashboard, this is showing them all of the work that's outstanding. So if, let's say, I've set a handful of pieces of work, of homework potentially for my class or classes, those would appear in the center here. And once they're expired, that would be made obvious on the dashboard. So the cards would be kind of grayed out, and you'd be able to see along the orange bar that it was a task that had been set in the past. Over on the right-hand side, I've got my classes. Now, this demo teacher account is set up to mimic if you like, a standard primary teacher, in that it only has access to the one class. But if your school doesn't work like that, if you have access to multiple classes, or if you're a school leader and need to be able to access all of the classes for that reason, then all of those classes would appear down the right hand side here. And I won't spend too much time focusing on it, but this is where you would go to make small kind of administrative changes, like resetting passwords or moving pupils between classes, that kind of thing. So the couple of things I want to focus on before we go back to Jenny and the remainder of the presentation are setting some work and then looking at the reports. So let's start with setting some work. And what I want to demonstrate to you is how straightforward that process is. So I'm going to click Set Work here. Because I only have access to one class, that class is automatically selected at the top here. If I had access to multiple classes, then the first thing I'd need to do would be to select which one or which ones I want to set a piece of work for. So if you have, for instance, multiple classes within each year group, then it's perfectly possible to set the same piece of work for all of those classes within the year group at the same time. By default, the work you set will be set for all of the pupils in the class, but it's possible for you to change that and for you to set it only for selected pupils within the class. So, for example, if you have pupils working at quite different levels, kind of ability levels or attainment levels in the class, it may be that you want to set slightly different versions of the same piece of work for those different groups of pupils, in which case I can click Selected Pupils, and it'll bring up a list of the pupils in my class, and I can select just the ones I want to set the work for. There's also a self-study mode, which allows you to just set some work for pupils, but rather than it being a kind of a discrete piece of work, like a homework task, what you're doing is just making it available for them to go in and use kind of as they see fit. So almost as a revision tool might be the best way of describing it. So they can log in, they can go into a kind of content library, and they can pick out modules to complete as they want to. So let's just reselect the default, which was all pupils in the class. The next thing I need to do is select the content I'm picking from. So in the case of Adapt Primary Maths, that's broken down by year group. So let's say, I think I have, not that it particularly matters, Year 3 is my class, so I'll pick Year 3 Adapt Maths. The next stage, once I've selected Year 3 Adapt Maths, it's going to bring up for me all of the modules that make up Year 3 Adapt Maths. So I'm just going to deselect all of them, and then I'm going to pick one. So The most straightforward way of doing this is just to say I'm going to select, for example, fractions 3.2. Bear with me 1 second. Sorry about that. I'm going to select fractions 3.2. As easy as that. The idea with these module groupings is that they are a reasonable size to be set as a discrete piece of work that should take somewhere around 20 minutes or so to complete. But it is also possible to dig into the content. So if I click the pencil icon, then I can see each of the individual learning objectives that make up this module that I've selected. And it may be that I only want to select very specific areas, or it may just be that I want to turn off 1 or 2 learning objectives that we haven't covered yet. So in this example, it may be that I'm happy to set the vast majority of fractions 3.2, but we haven't yet covered in class modeling using diagrams, in which case I'm going to unselect or deselect those ones. It's possible then, once you've made those selections, to click on estimated time required, which will give you a rough estimate based on real pupil data of how long it's likely to take your pupils on average to complete that piece of work, albeit obviously, given everything we've spoken about today, one thing you'll know about ADAPT and about adaptive learning in general is that it will take all of the pupils different amounts of time to complete each piece of work, because the platform will continue to drill them on the areas that they're not confident in or that they're struggling to understand. So then the last stage is very straightforward. This is our start and end dates. So you have the option either to have the work available to pupils immediately, in which case, as soon as I click save, a new card will appear on the pupils dashboard. Likewise with the, or you can have it to appear from a fixed date in the future. So that's useful if what you want to do is at the beginning of the term, for instance, set all of the work for that upcoming term, which some of the schools using ADAPT like to do. And it ensures that the pupils don't kind of race ahead of what you're covering in the classroom. It becomes available to them as you're covering it. Likewise with the end date, you have the ability to set a fixed end date or to set work with no end date at all, as you see fit. And just to quickly flag this late submission option, this is something we've introduced recently in response to school feedback. So what that allows you to do is to avoid having to go in and edit assignments in order for work to reappear on pupils' dashboards. So previously, the way ADAPT worked was that once this date passed, the pupils would no longer see the work on their dashboard. And the feedback from teachers was that there are a lot of reasons why pupils might not complete the work by the deadline. And actually, by having the work disappear from the dashboard, you just create extra work for the teachers because they have to go in and amend the original assignment so that it reappears and those late submitting pupils can go in and complete the work. So this allows you to say either open-ended, they can complete it as late as they like after the deadline, but crucially, as a teacher, I'll be able to see that they did it late. Or you can just give them a grace period of, say, 7 days after the deadline, in which they can still complete the work. So obviously, I took my time showing you every element of that, but hopefully what you should take away from it is that once you've done that once or a couple of times, that's an incredibly quick process to set a piece of work. It, be taking you a minute or so. And as I say, you can set the same piece of work for multiple classes. So a big time saver. So last thing to focus on is the reports. There are various different ways of getting into the reports. I have the button on the left-hand side. If I have multiple classes, then I can also click on the reports for an individual class. That, in this particular case, because I have just the one, there's no real difference between clicking here or clicking here. But it is worth flagging that you can also click on the reports for a specific piece of work that I've set. So it may be that this is the piece of work that that I set last week that the pupils were supposed to complete by today, and I want to go in and see how they did specifically with that. So I can click on the icon there. So what I'm going to do is click here and give you a quick run through of some of these reports. So the first one, how have the pupils done in the assignments that have been set for them? So there are 2 pieces of work. You can see that in this case, the week 2 homework hasn't really been started by the class, but the week 1 homework has been completed by a reasonable number of the pupils. You can immediately here, without digging down further, see what I was talking about before about certain students taking longer than others to complete the same piece of work. So pupil 8 took 19 minutes to complete the same piece of work that pupil 5 took 10 minutes to complete, and that's just down to the adaptive nature of the platform. But ultimately, they arrive at the same place, which is mastery of the content, hence the 100%. Most difficult learning objectives is a really useful report to be able to see because of the. I think Jenny talked a little bit about the very kind of granular learning objectives. And what that allows you to see as a teacher is down to a very granular level where the pupils are struggling. So the learning objectives that kind of rise to the top of this report are the ones that might need additional classroom time to cover because they're tripping the most students up based on how often the students are answering questions incorrectly. And then, just conscious of the time, let's quickly open up these couple of reports at the bottom. So in fact, I'm going to focus on this one at the bottom. So pupils ranked by performance, again, giving you a quick snapshot as a teacher of who is completing the work and who's excelling and who's perhaps either not completing the work or struggling with the work as they make their way through it based on various metrics here. So, I mean, that's a very quick overview of the reporting. It's really just, I mean, we could do a whole session on the reporting and adapt. It's one of the big benefits of the platform. I can also dig right down into the reporting related to individual pupils, so I can see exactly how a pupil did in a particular piece of work. That's probably not something that you'll be doing on a daily or weekly basis, but it might be something that's useful for when you're writing reports, or if a pupil's struggling and you want to dig into why. So yes, as I say, more to be learned on reporting, but hopefully that gives you a kind of an overview of what's available in the platform. And I think with that, I'll unshare my screen and hand back to Jenny.
Thank you very much, Alex. Let's see if I can get us back to the PowerPoint. Okay, hopefully you can see the PowerPoint screen again. One moment. Okay. So let's recap after that demo. I hope that what we showed you made sense and you were able to see some of the features, benefits, and the power of metacognition when the students rating their confidence, then feeding through into the reports. Because all of the reports that you'll see on the ADAPT platform are informed by metacognition. It's also worth noting that we're seeing it here, obviously, on a computer screen, but ADAPT is fully optimized for use across a range of device sizes, so that whether your learners are accessing it via a phone, a tablet, or a computer screen, they'll still be getting a good experience. So now you've experienced adaptive learning for yourself through the ADAPT platform, let's just recap on some of the key points. So ADAPT, it's not gamified learning, it focuses on mastery over speed, and it's not competitive. It rewards effort and reflection, and it ensures that learning time is targeted most effectively at every session. And this means that engagement improves because the experience is meaningful to individuals and nobody's left behind. And teachers can see exactly where the learning gaps are for each individual through the detailed reports and insights, saving them time and making sure that effort is focused in the right places. And each of the features that we've seen in the platform link back to these agreed benefits of adaptive learning. And just a quick word to reassure you that metacognition, it's not just a fad or an ideology for the few. It is something that is talked about more and more as an essential part of teaching and learning. And it's already happening in classrooms everywhere. So this is from the UK's Education Endowment Foundation report on improving mathematics in Key Stage 2 and Key Stage 3, which identified metacognition as the highest impact and lowest cost strategy that they examined for benefits for all learners and especially for disadvantaged ones. We've talked quite a lot, so if you'd like to hear more about metacognition and how to apply it more broadly in your classroom, then please do go to our Collins Adapt website and you can watch this video from memory and learning expert Dr. Jonathan Firth, which is looking at metacognition very broadly and how to incorporate it in your teaching strategies in all classrooms. We would like to invite you at this stage to explore the Adapt platform in a little more depth by signing up for a personalised digital demonstration. So you can scan the QR code on this slide, or you can get in touch directly through the email address to set up an online demonstration with one of our Adapt team. And in the demonstration, then they'll walk you through the platform. We've only been able to show you sort of a very high level experience at the moment, with time to ask as many questions as you need. You'll be able to experience the primary maths content, which is very rich and varied as a student, and to see the in-depth reporting and the ease of setting work as a teacher. And there's no commitment to subscribe to Adapt after the demos. Here's some more testimonials from our pilot initiative in the UK. I think it's worth mentioning that our pilot schools were recruited and were using the platform through, during, around and after school closures during the COVID challenges. So they were using it at a time of really challenged learning in schools. And I think it's testament to how resilient they were about how sort of they managed to harness the benefits of it. I'll just give you a moment to read some of those testimonials. I think something that comes through really clearly is actually the confidence raising aspect that they found in Adapt, and working with materials that automatically adjust to the level of the learner. Then that's something that really works very well for learners who are confident and want to accelerate ahead, but is also equally good at supporting learners who maybe find mathematics a little more challenging. So a very quick recap on the benefits of adaptive learning and how that is embodied in the Adapt platform from Collins. So it rewards effort and reflection. It reports back on every student so that you can quickly identify those learning gaps and you can work to close them. It constantly adapts by identifying what the students already know, so that students are not wasting time in the platform on information that they already know. There's a personalised learning journey for each student so that no learner is left behind. You can use it in a range of contexts and settings, supporting remote and blended learning seamlessly. And it automatically returns to those areas where students need to consolidate and review. Okay, that's the end of the formal presentation. So it's now time. I'll hand over to Bethan to invite any questions that you'd like to put to us.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, both Jenny and Alex, for that brilliant presentation there. And yeah, happy to move on to the Q&As. So we've got a few around here. So we've got one in the chat to say that in Reena in India having offline lessons, and this product is more online. So I think just to clarify with that one as well, Adapt, it's not just purely for online teaching in that way. So and Jenny and Alex, do jump in if you want to, but it's kind of to use in addition to your offline teaching as well, and also how then you would like to use it as a teacher too. I don't know if Jenny and Alex, if there's any more points you wanted to jump in on that, but it's just to use both ways really. So it's not just for that online element there. We've got a few more that have come in here too. I
think so. Just jumping in on that, I would say that yes, we've got experience from our Adapt user schools that they are using it in a really wide range of contexts. So some will be using it within the classroom, some will be using it as sort of flipped learning, where actually they might set a piece of work for students to work through ahead of doing some of that teaching in the classroom. Some people are using it for homework and others are using it for sort of revision and recap at the end of the topic. So yeah, it's designed to be flexible and it's designed to work and to integrate with whatever sort of curriculum and program of study and resources you're using at the moment.
Brilliant. And Jenny, that leads on to the next question that's been asked actually, just as a recommendation of how you would use it in the classroom, which Jenny's just answered there, and flexible as to how you want to use it as a teacher there too, whether homework, revision, or a tool to use alongside your teaching as well in the classroom.
Absolutely. And I think it will obviously depend on your teaching context. It will depend particularly on your learners as well, that you may have different learning groups who it's more appropriate to use in different ways.
Yeah, exactly. So we've got another question that's come through from Dahlia, who has said, I'm familiar with the Collins platforms and I really like Adapt a lot. Fantastic, that's great to hear. I'd like to have some kind of user guide, if possible, to check all the features after. So what I would recommend, Dahlia, is we'll be sending around the recording of this webinar within the next week. So I'd recommend if you could use that as well, and you'll get the full presentation then, and you can sort of refer back to points that you'd like to see, or any specific elements that you'd like to know more of as well. We'd recommend if you can contact us with the details on the screen there as well, and we'll be able to answer any of your questions as well.
Just to jump in, I'm sure we probably could share it. I don't see any reason why we couldn't share a user guide as well. We do have some, yeah. So
yeah,
and that just runs through, to be honest, as you were saying, runs through pretty much what we've covered today. But yeah, it might be just another way for teachers to be able to look at it.
Absolutely. And if anyone would like that, then please do email us with the email that's on the screen now, and we'll get that over to you and send over the guides for those. Perfect. Then Dahlia's also asking another question here. So it's regarding the same report will be previewed on pupils dashboards too with struggling points. So I think that is there a report for pupils to see back once they've answered the questions, or does it give pupils feedback on the questions that have been answered?
Yeah, so yeah, that's a really interesting point. Actually, it came up in a conversation I had with a school just a few days ago. At the moment, the reporting that's available to the pupils when they log in is very basic. We kept it very basic on purpose, really, so they can see kind of overall how long they've spent, and then they can see which activities they've completed and how much time they've spent completing them. But it's something that we're looking into, whether we could also make that kind of most difficult learning objectives information available to the pupils. I think the reason we haven't done that up to this point is that learning objectives weren't necessarily written with pupils in mind. They were written with teachers in mind. So pupils won't necessarily be used to seeing learning objectives written out in that way. So we'd need to make sure, if we were going to make it available to them, that it was meaningful to them, and the sort of thing that they would see value from.
Absolutely. But again, the data that you get as a teacher is kind of the background of understanding, their understanding of knowing what they know, and that metacognition. So you can go back as a teacher and maybe reteach that topic, or send some extra support for that topic as well, which is the be all and all the support for ADAPT, a fantastic feature to support you guys as teachers as well. We've got another question that's come in, and this is a nice question, and this is one we really like to answer. So, do I have to do any marking with the platform?
No. It's a nice, short, simple answer. No. You saw an example in Alex's demo of some of the varied question types within ADAPT. So it has been designed that it's got lots of varied inputs for the students to keep things fresh, but all of them are automatically marked. So what you get as the teacher is you get all of the data out of that, but you don't have to do the marking to get that data out.
Fantastic. I can hear everyone's cheers on the call now. It saves so much time for everyone as teachers. No one wants to sit there marking after you've just done a full day of work as well. So it's fantastic.